Top 10 Greatest Historical Myths. Number 1 is really, very shocking. Number 10, Newton was hit by an apple. Apples continue to get bad press, with the famous story that scientist Sir Isaac Newton was under a tree, minding his own business, when an apple fell on his head. Just as well it provided him the inspiration for the laws of gravity, or the poor apple would never be forgiven. But while the falling apple is a good story, it probably never happened. The story was first published in an essay by Voltaire, long after Newton's death. Before that, Newton's niece, Catherine Conduit, was the only person who ever told the story. It was almost certainly an invention. So next time never blame apples. Number 9, Walt Disney drew Mickey Mouse. One of the world's most famous fictitious characters, Mickey Mouse, is credited to Walt Disney. However, Mickey was the vision of Disney's #1 animator, Ub Iwerks. Disney, never a great artist, would always have trouble drawing the character who made him famous. Fortunately for him, Iwerks was known as the fastest animator in the business. He single-handedly animated Mickey's first short film, Plain Crazy, 1928. In only 2 weeks. That's 700 drawings a day. Iwerks was known as the fastest animator in the world. But give some credit to Disney, when sound films began later that year, he played Mickey's voice. Number 8, Napoleon was a little corporal. Some people believe that Napoleon's domineering ambitions were to compensate for being so physically small. Not so true. Napoleon was called the Little Corporal. But he was 5 feet, 7 inches tall, taller than the average 18th century Frenchman. So why the nickname? Early in his military career, soldiers used it to mock his relatively low rank. The name stuck, even as he became ruler of France. Number 7. Shakespeare wrote the story of Hamlet. William Shakespeare is generally known as the greatest playwright who ever lived, even though most of his plays were not original, but adaptations of earlier stories. The tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, probably his most famous play, was based on an ancient Scandinavian story. But, while it might not have been the original version of the story, we can safely assume it was the best, and we love it. Number 6. America became independent on July 4, 1776. As most American school children, and many non-American ones, are aware that America's founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776. However, the war raged for another 7 years before independence from England was finally granted on September 3, 1783. On that day, Britain's George III and U.S. leaders signed the definitive Treaty of Peace. Number 5. Edison invented the electric light. Thomas Edison is known as the world's greatest inventor. Over a century later. Astonishing, except for one thing, he didn't invent most of them. Most Edison inventions were the work of his unsung technicians. And his most famous invention, the electric light, didn't even belong to his lab. 4 decades before Edison was born, English scientist Sir Humphrey Davy invented arc light, using a carbon filament. For many years, numerous innovators would improve on Davy's model. The only problem None could glow for more than 12 hours before the filament broke. The achievement of Edison's lab was to find the right filament that would burn for days on end. A major achievement, but not the first. Number 4. Columbus proved that the Earth was round. It was American author Washington Irving, some 500 years after Columbus sailed to America, who first portrayed the Italian explorer as launching on his voyage to prove that the Earth was round, defying the common, flat-earther belief of the time. In fact, most educated Europeans in Columbus's day knew that the world was round. Since the 4th century BC, almost nobody has believed that the Earth is flat. Even if that wasn't the case, Columbus would never have set out to prove that the Earth was round. Simply because he didn't believe it himself. Columbus thought that the Earth was beer-shaped. He set sail to prove something else, that Asia was much closer than anyone thought. Even in this, he was wrong. To further besmirch his memory, it should also be noted that he never set foot on mainland America. The closest he came was the Bahamas. Beer-shaped, indeed. Number 3. Gandhi liberated India. Mahatma Gandhi is one of the most famous leaders of India's independence movement. He deserves credit for promoting the ancient ideals of ahimsa. Gandhi was just one of several independence leaders. The Indian National Congress was founded as early as 1885, when he was only 16. Gandhi's much publicized civil disobedience was only a small part in the movement, and some historians even suggest that India would have achieved independence sooner, if they had focused on the more forceful methods that they had used 50 years earlier, and which were still advocated by other independence leaders, such as Gandhi's rival Netaji Chandra Bose. Number 2. Jesus was born on December 25. Christmas is meant to celebrate the birth of Jesus, but there is no evidence whatsoever, biblical or otherwise, that he was actually born on that day. There are differing views as to why December 25th was chosen as Christmas Day, but one of the most interesting is that the day was already celebrated by followers of Mithras, the central god of a Hellenistic cult that developed in the eastern Mediterranean around 100 BC. The followers of this faith believe that Mithras was born of a virgin, on 25 December, and that his birth was attended by shepherds. Number 1. George Washington was America's first president. Everyone knows that Washington was the first president of the U.S. However, this isn't strictly the case. During the American Revolution, the Continental Congress chose Peyton Randolph as the first president. Under Randolph, one of their first moves was to create the Continental Army in defense against Britain, appointing General Washington as its commander. Randolph was succeeded in 1781 by John Hancock, who presided over independence from Great Britain. After Washington defeated the British at the Battle of Yorktown. 8 years later, Washington himself became America's first popularly elected president, but strictly speaking, the 15th president. Thank you for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to leave a comment.